Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You get more information and listen to previous shows on our website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield. I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about different people and organizations in Western North Carolina. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Carolina Quiroga. Is that close enough or in the ballpark? Who's a storyteller, performer, teacher, artist, writer, for being my guest today. And Carolina, you can feel free to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. So give them a big wave. That's Carolina. I should mention that Carolina is a dynamic bilingual storyteller dedicated to weaving the vibrant threads of Latin American heritage into the fabric of contemporary storytelling. As a teaching artist, she strives to explore creative voices, minds, and bodies through the lens of storytelling. Her goal is to inspire others to reconnect with their personal narratives and to tap into their creativity, embrace their unique stories, and discover the power of their imagination and heritage. So the first question I always ask when I meet somebody for the first time, Carolina, is as a child you grew up where?
I'm from Colombia, South America.
Oh,
I
so it's
grew
my
up
daughter.
in,
My daughter is from Colombia, by the way. So
oh, really?
yeah. So you grew up in Colombia, and when you were a little girl growing up in Colombia, did you always know you wanted to be a storyteller?
I think deep down I did. The more I think about it now that I'm getting older, I realized that I did had this burning desire to tell stories since I was a kid. I remember one time I was in eighth grade and I love history. So I love reading about the Vikings and all kinds of history. And we had a test. And I read everything about the Vikings. I did maps and everything. I was a huge nerd. And when I came the next day in the morning, all my friends are panicking because obviously no one likes history. And they see me all chill, just like, I don't care. I mean, I'm good. I got it. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, did you know the history what was gonna come in the test? And I said, yeah, of course I know. I mean, I studied it. I love it. And then I had a lot of people sitting around me and I started just telling them the history of the Vikings. And so like little memories like that is what makes me realize that since I was very young, I was very drawn to reading and retelling. I really loved it. So and even better if you have an audience.
You remember the first time you ever had an audience where you told stories?
Um, I did when I first time like a
Right.
storyteller, I was at the University in Cali, Colombia. I was studying engineering, industrial engineering. And I had joined a group of storytellers, and we were doing something like a little showcase. And so I remember being on stage for the first time, and I told a story I wrote, which was very funny for everybody, but it wasn't meant to be that funny.
Okay.
Uh, so that I do remember that one.
So
That
that
was
was the first story you ever told. Did you ever tell
Mhm.
it again?
I told it several times because we went on a little tour to different
Oh.
universities. And I was just holding on to that story. I didn't give myself the chance to read other stories at the time, which I should have, but for some reason, I was just trying to, I guess, perfect one. Um, and I told that story, and the reaction was always the same. People were laughing and laughing, and I kept thinking to myself, but I never meant it to be funny. Uh, but I love that reaction. And I loved also the fact that sometimes what you put out there, you don't know how it's going to be taken. And so it makes you kind of go back into to the story and see, okay, maybe the intention I had was not that one, and the story itself wants to be told in a different way or wants to be seen in a different way. So that's probably one of the first times I realized stories are just like beings, like, they have their own life, I guess. and we're kind of vessels uh, when we're telling those stories.
Now, I'm surprised that when you mentioned your background, you started out, you were an engineering major, is that correct?
Yeah.
Because I would think too, did you ever want to be a history teacher or a history major along the line?
No, well, my dream that I remember for many years, I wanted to be a forensics anthropologist. I
Okay.
wanted to dig out bones, and I used to watch Discovery or History Channel. That's like 20 years ago, and they would have these documentaries on all these archaeologists or anthropologists digging out bones and then reconstructing them and showing what the face of that person would
Right.
have looked like, and trying to, based on all the other things that that person was buried with, like who that was, a king or just a maiden, or a warrior, and the conditions of their passing, etc. So I always thought that's what I wanted to do. But to do that, I had to leave my city and go to another city to study. And I'm an only child, and my dad said, "No, you're not leaving us. You're studying here." Um, and so my options, then I try to switch to maybe sociology, something that eventually would take me to anthropology. But unfortunately, at the time, my dad was one of those times when people thought that engineering, that kind of um, careers were the careers that would, provide stability. And so my dad was like, "No, you study medicine or you become an engineer because that's the only way you can have a job and, have a life, et cetera, et cetera." And so I chose engineering, and I chose what I thought it was the easiest one, so I could, go through it quickly and eventually try to figure it out how, you know, circle back to my original intention.
So did you
But it
become,
didn't go like that. But what I'm trying to say is that in the end, when I wanted to do anthropology was because I was so interested in stories.
sure.
And later in life, when I finally got back to reading stories, to go back, then I realized I didn't need to do that because when I'm telling stories, I'm actually digging into bones. I'm
Sure.
putting them together. I'm doing exactly all those things without having to, get messy. So
And
it
so
worked
many
out.
years studying. Did you eventually become an engineer?
I did. I graduated. I graduated, but never worked
Oh, I was
as
just
an
going to ask you.
engineer.
So you listened to your dad. You went to school for engineering, but you never became a practicing engineer.
No, no,
Okay.
no. But I don't regret it because it's like one of those things that I met my best friends that are still with me. I mean, people that I still talk to. I learned how to swim when I was going through that school, and it became my biggest passion in terms of sports, swimming. Um, a lot of good things that happened while I was studying engineering, and it also shaped my mind, as in I'm an organized person. I have a little bit of that mind wired in a way that an engineer does sometimes, not completely, but it has helped me throughout the years when I jumped into becoming an artist, and it wasn't as frightening as it would have been if I didn't have those that knowledge or those skills, um, as if I had just like jumped and see what happens.
By the way, listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, this is a great story. Just the story how a would-be engineer then became a storyteller. But
Yeah.
you tell it, I mean, that's what you do. You're a storyteller, but you tell it very well. It's just fascinating listening to you. So fast forward that then. So you went to school for engineering, then you graduated at some point in time. What happened to so you didn't become an engineer. What did you become instead of an engineer? A storyteller?
No, what happened was while I was finishing engineering, I decided to start a second career. Um, and my dad, at first, my dad, he had seen that I was prone to arts because I used to paint and do murals in the house and things like that, and be kind of creative. And so he thought I could do graphic design. So at the time, graphic design was becoming something huge.
Right.
So he thought, yeah, okay, if you want to study something, go that way then. So I went that way, but then I discovered that graphic design, I love art, I love being creative, which today I make puppets, for instance. Um, but I did not feel like working with clients because that's very tough. There's a lot of back and forth dialogue, and if they don't like it, goes back. And sometimes if you're a freelancer, they don't pay you. So there's a lot of tricky things being a graphic designer. And also you have to be creative 24/7, which I was like, I love being creative, but I don't want to be under pressure all the time. Um, I want to be able to be creative when I feel like being creative, and I don't want to work in one medium either, which was the computer, all the time glued to a computer. So I switched to communications and journalism, and that's what changed my life because um, it's all about stories. And so I graduated as a communicator and journalist. I never really worked as a journalist, and part of that is because at the time Colombia, uh, well, we had some issues, uh, and journalists were sometimes being targeted,
I was going to say that. Yeah.
especially political journalists,
Right.
right? So I ended up working as a public relations and marketing. So I ended up working promoting artists at different cultural centers, and that worked really well. It turned out that I have the ability to relate to people and talk and do all that, and but it was through that by seeing those artists on stage that I realized, well, you know what? I want to be on stage.
One of
Like
the
I love
things,
being here, being creative, doing other things, but that's what I want to be.
one of the things that you mentioned, I can see the value of it, that when you're working with puppets. So at one time you work with puppets. Um,
I do. I work a lot with puppets these days.
okay, is that involved in your storytelling also?
With children, yes.
Because
Um,
yeah, no, because one of the nice things I would imagine with them is they don't talk back to you at least. The kids may, but the puppets don't, so some degree of control over the puppets. So you're in Colombia. When did you come to America?
I came in 2012,
Okay.
January the 6th, 2012.
And did you come to this
And
area at that time?
I came to Johnson City, Tennessee to do the master's in storytelling.
Okay, okay, so that's like storytelling capital of the world. And so
Yes.
that's what you did masters there?
Yeah, exactly. I
Okay.
graduated.
But boy, that's some shift. You've gone through a couple of different, career shifts. Is your dad still around?
Yes, yeah.
Well, hopefully you can say hi to him. Hopefully he'll listen to the show. But that was just something. I love the story. So starting out from, and I guess fathers were that way at a time. You had to be a doctor or something else, and now you became in journalism and then storytelling. Has he ever heard you tell stories?
Yes, he came once when I was living in San Antonio and I was doing a residency at the Whitty Museum on Mayan tales, which is one of the cultures I fell in love with, and I have a lot of Mayan tales in my repertoire. And they hired me to come and tell stories during the whole exhibition of the Mayan culture, which was amazing. And he came during that time and he listened to me telling stories. And it was very cute seeing him, paying attention and also seeing him watching the audience response because he's a teacher and he's been a
Oh,
teacher for a long time. So he knows what it is to, try to work an audience to pay attention to you.
sure.
But then one thing is to teach something, and another one is just to, spellbound, so, cast a spell on the audience and have them all like watching you, reacting and all that.
Well, so that must have been really exciting to have him in the audience. Like I said, we'll send them a copy of this clip, or hopefully they'll watch it too, because we're talking about him. But that's quite a trajectory you've had. So then you got your master's it was in storytelling, master's was?
Yes.
Okay. And so he probably thought at one time, how can anybody have a career or livelihood in storytelling? But this is what you wanted to do. So you started, I guess, taking storytelling seriously from a career standpoint after you graduated the master's program.
Yes, I confess that when I came, I wasn't 100% sure that that's what I wanted to do. But I was very interested in stories. So I just wanted to explore that. I just didn't know I was gonna pursue a career in performing. Also, they offer you the option to go on education and other routes, right? But it was during my practicum hours towards the end that you have to do 40 hours of, at least when I was there, you had to go to different places, the schools, and try to get 40 hours of practice. And it was through by doing all that over and over and over again for a period of, I don't know, 2, 3 months, that I realized that's what I wanted to do next. I wanted to tell stories, and most importantly, at the time, I wanted to tell Latin American stories because I identified that the knowledge about it was it was lacking, or what people knew about our
Uh,
cultures was very biased or wrong. Um, and so I thought, well, maybe I could turn this into my purpose, my mission. And I just try to go through the route where I'm still educating, entertaining, and performing, but through the lenses of Latin American stories, our folklore, our cultures, etc.
what's cool about listening to you is I'm getting the sense is that this is as of 2025. But who knows what's going to be in 2030? It just seems, which I love listening to you. You've gone in these many different kinds of directions, and I just love it because I was going to ask you, out of all the things you've done, so we know you as a storyteller. I assume you also teach storytelling or you've taught storytelling, have you?
I do workshops in
Right.
storytelling when they ask me to do them, but mostly what I do is, well, I perform in festivals, libraries, schools, but these days I'm doing more, I'm a teacher artist, part of the TAPAS, which is the teacher artist performing in Asheville. And we go to schools and we do residencies of about a week or two in different in classrooms. Um, and so I use the storytelling to teach different things that the teachers are interested in me to give to the kids. So uh, that's when I get to use the puppets a lot, and is I think so far it's one of the most rewarding things I've done because I get to see, like, when I perform one time any show, you see the reaction of the people and then they say thank you, etc. Or if I do a show at a school, it's just one time and thank you, and there's hugs and all that, but I don't get to see how the kid, their appreciation of storytelling or their learning process evolves. But when I go and do a residency at a school, I get to see the kid on Monday and how, maybe how the kids are like, I don't know what that is, or how engaged they are, but how clueless they are too, or how afraid they are towards certain subjects. Or maybe the teacher feels like they're not getting this thing, this specific thing, but by the Friday, they completely got it in a completely different way because we approach the subject in a creative way where there's no fear, it's just play and story. And so I get to see at the end of Friday how the kids are finally answering correctly everything, are empowered. Um, I don't know. I get to see all that evolution, and that's like one of the best rewards for me because I feel like that storytelling works, and that I did a good job, and the puppets did it with me. So it was fun.
It's too bad I didn't tell you or have my producer tell you, but we would have loved to have had the puppets now, or instead of you telling, do you have them handy, by the way?
I can go grab them, but it'll take me about a minute.
Well, do me a favor, just since we're talking about it, because I have an idea I want to share with you. I'm just going to pause this a second, get your puppets, and we'll come back.
Okay, okay.
Hi, Blaine Greenfield again, and we're back with Carolina Quiro- Quiroga, I think almost there. And we're talking about some of the storytelling she does. And I have to ask her to step aside for a second because as she's telling me about all the cool stuff she does, I understand you also have some people to help you out or some friends to help you out with this. And she was telling me you use these puppets. Do you use these puppets with just kids or do you ever use them with adults?
Um, I've most of the time I use it with kids, but I've used it with adults before and it has been great. And I just pitched an idea to Story Parlor, which is a
Sure.
great place in Asheville, about doing story theater with adults, and they love the idea. So we're going to see if we can start having a series of shows with the puppets, but the adults will be playing them while I'm the narrator.
I love it.
Yes.
By the way, and we'll also mention off the air, but do you ever work with kids who have autism?
Not well, I did once. I was doing a workshop on storytelling in San Antonio. I remember one of my kids was autistic. His mother said that. But most of the time that I have autistic kids, they have been they're part of the classroom.
Right.
So it's not like I have to have I have a group, but it's just one kid normally that I know.
Just remind me, when we were off the air, I'll tell you about a group that my wife does volunteer work with. It's Arms Around ASD for kids on Spectrum. And they would just love I'll introduce you to the group. It's just they would love what you're doing. But I cut you off before you went out and got some of your friends. So I can't believe you have 40 different puppets floating around or
At
characters
least.
at least. And
Yes.
so I guess there's been a collection you built up over the years.
Kind of. I mean, I would say maybe 80% of the puppets are part of a specific story that I tell, and the other ones I just got them because they were so cute.
Do you ever
And I
make
just couldn't
do
resist.
you ever make the puppets yourself?
I do. I make puppets. I made what I call stick puppets. They look like this,
Okay.
and they are for story theater, which is when the audience gets to hold them and participate, and in some cases they may have lines here, dialogues, and I'm the narrator, so I'm just guiding everybody like once upon a time the lion appeared, and so the kid knows that he has to come and
Was
maybe
that
do some
fun?
voices, stuff like that.
So they have a good time. So since you have them out, could you introduce me some of the other what do you call them, friends or what do you call them? Your characters or how do
Yes,
you
they're my friends, although in some cases I feel like they're my babies.
really? Okay. So you have one in your lap there who
Yeah.
are going to meet.
Hey, hey, Blaine. Is that his name?
Blaine,
Yes, that's his name.
Okay. Hey, Blaine. How are ya?
I love it. And what I love about it, well, and he talks also, right?
Of course I do. What do you think I'm doing right now?
And what's great, I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. The great thing about this, and especially with ventriloquism, is they don't pay attention to you then. They're paying attention to the puppets.
Yes, it's only to the puppets. They're normally not paying attention to your mouth.
Right.
Um, like when I'm trying to really curate a story and then I'm very self-aware, then I have to really work on my mouth with a mirror. But most of the time, ventriloquist friends have said that it really doesn't matter that much because people or the kids are just looking at the puppet. Even if a kid looks at you, rarely you're gonna see a kid saying, "Wait a minute, you're the one talking." Um, but for just to avoid that, normally what I do in a show or classroom, I always start the session with calling the imagination. So I had a little chant and we do some things and we call, it's a spell on calling the imagination. And when we call the imagination, then it's easier for them to accept that while he is here doing this, I'm also talking for him, like, "Hey, how are you?" And I don't have to try too hard to just keep my lips closed. So
Wait, beautiful puppet. Did you make that one yourself?
no, this one is actually made in Germany.
Okay, beautiful puppet. You
Yes.
know, Carolina, the way you do it. So my wife and I once went to a party. We had a Halloween party, and we were ventriloquists. And what we did is we just talked behind, so I just put it in front of the mouth, so say, hey, and have the puppet talk. So you could, I guess, do that to get away with it. But I love how they
Yes. I mean, it all depends. Like, for instance, this guy is part of another story that is a meatball. And so the meatball, I have both in each hand. And so she talks here while he talks on this one. So I have to be in the middle for for this one
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they go
Yeah,
around it.
with the three of them, I just love them. The three of you. Do you ever get confused to who's talking or who's responsible?
Well, I do have to rehearse because there's sometimes the voice, like one voice will switch to the other one. I was like, never mind. Okay. So rehearsal is important, but normally it hasn't happened on stage.
What
So
about stories then? So when you collect the stories, so just a ballpark figure, how many stories do you have at your disposal, would you say? 50,
um,
100?
I would probably go with 50, just trying to be modest.
Okay.
Um, but for kids at least. And then I also do personal storytelling, and which is relatively new to me, just a year doing it, but at least I have already like 10 personal stories. Um,
So these are stories based on your life and your career?
yes.
Or just saying as we're talking, I see a great story. This woman in Latin America who becomes a story, it's just a story itself. It's just a fascinating story. And the kids would love to hear it, because you went through so many things I guess they go through, that and
Yeah.
what you were saying, I'm so impressed with. Who decides it? You or your parents, and who decides what your career is going to be. So talk then about then the other stories. So you have 10 you've written yourself, and 40 you base on other stories or stories that have been out there.
Yeah, all the other stories that I have are traditional storytelling. So they are myths, legends, folk tales. These are folk tales, all of them, or what pourquoi tales, which are like why the why the elephant has a long nose, right? So those are for children mostly, but and they mostly, I would say 80% of the stories I tell come from Latin America. But I do tell stories from other parts of the world, especially if it's in an educational environment. So
Well, the exciting thing I would imagine then with stories from Latin America, when you're in this country, a lot of kids have probably never heard them before, or they're unique to them.
they are. What I find the most rewarding is when there's a kid from Latin America,
Um,
and they immediately you see their eyes sparks, and they pop and they feel happy. Um, I'm starting to write a project on one myth per Latin American country
love it.
and in rhyme. And so those are stories that are 2, 3 minutes long. And once I was in Wisconsin, I think, and I was going to perform at a school, and just one group had left, and then another group came, and they were like second, third graders, and a girl sits up front, and the first thing she says is, "I'm from Puerto Rico." And then she starts talking Spanish because she saw me. She's like, she looks like she could be Puerto Rican maybe. And so we start talking, and then the first question she asked was, "Are you telling a Puerto Rican story?" And I said, "Would you like me to?" And that was not my plan. My plan was completely different because there's the stories for second and third graders and others for little. And I never thought that project I could tell those myths and rhyme to children because I was planning for more for like adults. I don't know why I was thinking that because the moment I told that specific myth from Puerto Rico, that girl was enthralled. And all the other kids actually paid attention. It was so beautiful. And I knew I had met her happy. And at the end, well, she became my best friend after all the kids left, and she told me her whole life and how she arrived to the United States and everything. So I love those moments when I'm telling Latin American stories because those kids get to be seen and appreciated. Um, and there are other kids who also have friends or family that are from other parts of Latin America, and they get to also say, "Hey, my father is from Mexico," or "my cousin," or "I went to Cuba," or "I went to, Colombia," and so they get to also be seen as their experiences are validated.
The writing of the stories. So you mentioned you work in some stories now. So that's another thing you do, I'll say in your spare time. Not only do you tell stories, do you put together school programs, but you also write stories. Do you
Yes.
ever, do these ever become a collection, or are they going to become a book, or what are you going to do with all of these stories?
Well, the funny thing is that so far I've most of the stories I wrote was for individuals gigs. Like, they have a set of
Right.
tellers, artists, and so I
Yeah.
was just one of them. But recently I put a show on all original work, which is called You Speak Very Good English. And uh, I perform it. I was going to perform it at the Fringe Festival, but then I was hospitalized. But they gave me the opportunity to do it again about 2 weeks ago, and I did it at the 35 Below Theater,
Well, sure.
and it was great. I did two shows, and it was my first time showcasing original work, all three pieces, which is actually storytelling and poetry. And I was also changing clothes on stage. I had music, I had props, I had a mule, an inflatable mule with me. Um, so it was great, and it's actually a show that I want to expand, make it bigger and longer. That's what I've been working this summer to just kind of make it bigger, so I can, get a bigger um, spot, I guess, and sell it in different places.
Very exciting. So these stories then, so when you write them, the original ones you write, do you collect them, or are they going to be then your first book, or are you going to put them out anywhere?
Well, just 2 days ago, I'm glad you're asking that question because 2 days ago, someone was talking about writing a book of a collection of personal essays and stories.
Sure.
And I thought to myself, I probably should do the same because at this point I have at least maybe 10 uh, stories that I already performed, personal stories, but I have another five written, not performed, and I have another 10 on papers. Like I need to, write a story about this. And they all circle around my experience as an immigrant here.
No, I just love it. And remind me off there, I'll do a spin on that. But I think what a fantastic idea to, like I said, not only can they hear you, but if they can't hear you, to see you or read it, or your artistic background, or get an illustrator or something. But it's, I love the concept. Let's fast forward then to not only the stuff you've done, but now you have a couple upcoming gigs you were telling me about off the air. And ironically, they're this coming week. Why don't you talk a little bit about them?
Yes, on Thursday, May the 8th at 7 p.m., I will be telling at the Weaverville Community Center. It's a show that is very close to my heart. It's one of the first shows I've done. Is what made me fall in love and make the decision of really contributing to the appreciation of Latin American cultures. And it's called From Xibalba to the Moon, Mayan Tales. And so that I'll be dressing like a Mayan person with huipil and everything. I'm bringing props on stage. It's free. So it's a collection of stories, myths, mythology of the Maya, but it also includes a literature piece by one of the most renowned Guatemalan writers, Miguel Ángel Asturias. And he was trying to, get people to know the Maya culture. And so he blended their mythology with history. So I will be doing a piece on that, and
Now,
that is on Thursday.
are you the only teller on Thursday, or are there others?
Yes, on Thursday. It's just me.
Just you, very exciting. 7 o'clock. If Beautiful center, Weaville Center. Have you been there before or spoken there?
Yes, I told one story like 2 months ago there.
Okay. A great facility, 7 o'clock. People should come out to it. So after Thursday, what else is on your agenda?
On Friday, I am emceeing a storytelling show called Voices in Harmony, which is part of the Amadeus Symphony
Sure.
Festival. And that one is going to be at Land of Sky, the Unitarian Church. And it's at 7 p.m. and it has an excellent lineup of storytellers, beloved storytellers from Asheville, from the Asheville Storytelling Circle, such as Donna Catton Johnson, Chuck Fink, Wallace Bohannon, Deb Martin, and Janelle Woodland. So I'll be emceeing that one.
Now, that one also, will you be telling any story or just emceeing?
Um, Maybe someone said, "Why don't you tell a 2-minute story?" So I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking if I should or not do it. It kind of depends on time, really.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't want to take the time of the, teller's time.
So that's another that's coming up this Friday, and it starts again what time?
At 7 p.m.
Okay, and if people want to get information about that or the other one, do you have a website or do you have other information where they can get stuff you're doing?
Yes, they can. I posted today on my Facebook, which is Carolina Storyteller. Also Carolina Quiroga. So you can find more information. The two posts are there and the links,
Great.
at least the link for buying the tickets on for Friday is right there. But if not, anybody can just access the Amadeus Symphony website and just look for Voices in Harmony. That's the show on Friday.
You have a website also?
I do. My website is carolinaquiroga.com.
Okay, and all the information is there as well?
Well, not for those shows, really. I should put it right there. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow morning.
You should, yeah, exactly. Well, there's all the information about you, including, by the way, put this link on your website, put it on your
Yeah.
Facebook page as well, because it'll have information. So, wow, you got some busy week this week. I mean, the highlight, of course, is being on the Blaine's World webcast. So this is it can't go much beyond that, but you have shows this week, 2 shows. Anything else you can share upcoming?
On May the 31st, I will be performing along with other great storytellers at the Black Mountain Center for the Arts.
Okay, great
Um,
place.
yeah, it's a great place. We've done it there before, and it always gets full. So that one is coming on May 31st. It's a Spring Tales. So the topic is open, but I will be telling on that one.
Okay. And beyond that, anything upcoming?
I'll be doing libraries, visiting libraries in June and July. So if anyone wants to come, bring their children or just come and see what's up, what is it that I do? So you can go to the libraries, the Buncombe County libraries, and then it should say right there where I'll be telling stories. It's 3 different libraries.
Great.
And so that's kind of what's coming for the summer.
And I encourage you, like I said, to put it on your website because you're doing so many cool things. And if they're not on Facebook or they don't use Facebook, this would be a great way to find that information. Last question, put you on the spot. Down the road, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, do you see yourself doing anything different with storytelling?
I do. I sure hope that I am well, one of my dreams now, and it's been a dream for about a year and a half. I want to be a children's author. So I hope I already have a couple of books, children books published. I also, if the idea of writing my own, publishing my own journey, my personal journey, becomes a book, that would be great too. Um, but that's kind of where I see myself. Maybe by then I have traveled around the world a
Yeah, but
lot.
the one thing I can see you doing too, do you ever see yourself being a teacher?
I have considered, but I don't think I can be a full-time teacher because the work is really hard. They have is I don't think it's a job that is fully appreciated. Um, and by working side by side with teachers, I see that they put a lot in it, and and I still kind of like my independence a little bit, my time. So I like being a teacher artist. I like being able to go there and be there for a week or two, and then I go to another school and I meet another group. Um, but yes, I like the flexibility of that.
And you say that, and I love that in my life too, but certainly you put a lot of time into what you do, so you're
I do.
saying that, it's just, but I guess you're in control of it 24/7, but you do it when you want to do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to thank you for being my guest, Carolina Quiroga, for this edition of Blaine's World webcast. Hopefully one of these days we'll bump into each other in person, and just whatever you're doing, keep it up. It's great. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Blaine.
Okay.
I love being here. Thank you.
Okay, I also thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and we'll see you next time, someplace, somewhere. Thanks, Carolina.